Good afternoon, friends. Today, our topic is GST on healthcare sector. Before starting, first of all, my heartfelt gratitude to respected CEO Khurana sir for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts on GST on healthcare sectors. Before we start, we should know some brief facts about healthcare industry. According to a media report, the healthcare market in India is expected to reach US dollar 372 billion by 2022. In this report, this fact is also mentioned that the government of India aims to increase healthcare spending to 3% of the GDP by 2022. Now move on to implications of GST on healthcare sector. The medical industry in India also witnessed major changes due to the introduction of GST. In some areas, GST had been levied, where some areas were given relief by way of giving exemption. We can, for the sake of convenience, to understand the GST impact in this particular industry, divide the medical sector into the following mentioned branches. First, services for OPD, that is outdoor patient department. Second, services for IPD, bundle services, indoor patient department. Third is medical consultancies. Fourth is medical or pharmacy stores. Fifth one is blood bank services. And sixth one is beauty treatment services. Seventh one is biomedical based treatment services. Eighth one is medical tests. And ninth is veterinary doctor services. And last is the renting services. We all know that the Government of India, by notification number 12 of the 2017 sector tax rate dated 28 June 2017, has given exemption to the exemption to the medical sector about the leviability of GST. The entry regarding the healthcare services exemption states in this particular notification states that services by way of healthcare services by a clinical establishment, an authorized medical practitioner or paramedics. Second, services provided by way of transportation of a patient in an ambulance other than those specified in A above are exempt from GST. In this particular notification, some explanations are also given about the what are the clinical establishments, what are the healthcare services, and who are the authorized medical practitioners. If we summarize this exemption, then we can categorize this exemption in two parts. First is nature of services exempt, and second one is services provided by. The first one is services, nature of service exempt is services of diagnosis, oblique treatment, oblique cure, oblique ambulances services are exempt from GST. Further, hair transplant, cosmetic, plastic surgery, where according to the doctor it is mandatory for a patient, is also exempt. And services provided by whom? And first is clinical establishment, hospital, nursing home, clinic, sanatorium, testing lab, etc. Medical practitioners, doctors must have a medical authorized degree. Only those persons are provided with GST exemption. Third one is paramedics staff, nursing staff, public supporting staff. With the above discussion, we can simply adopt a formula for GST levy in this particular industry is whenever services are given for cure, GST will not be levied, and whenever services are given for care, GST will be levied. Now we will discuss the point-wise effect of GST on various medical branches. First is GST on outdoor patient services. The outdoor patient services are primarily those services which are being given to the patient who came to the clinical establishment for the purpose of taking consultation services for their treatment. As per the exemption notification 12/2017, when such services are given for curing the patient, then it will be going to be exempt. Next one is GST on indoor patient services. The indoor patient services are those services which are being given to the patients who are admitted to the clinical establishment for treatment, surgery, etc., and includes bundled services. In this particular service, I would like to mention here that in the case of IPD services, the patients are generally given bundled services like canteen services, supply of medicines, etc. Whenever such services are given as a bundled services like canteen and medical medicine supply, such services are exempt from GST. And although when such services are given separately, these services are taxable. Now move on to GST on medical consultancy. Such services can be defined as the consultancy services are being provided by the medical professionals for the purpose of treating a patient. No GST will be levied on such medical consultancy services, but such consultancy must be given for the purpose of cure and not for the purpose of cure. In this branch, I would like to mention the medical consultants hereby does not include the consultancies or treatment for the beauty treatment or chip centers run by the authorized medical practitioners, because such services are not covered in the exemption entry of notification number 212/2017, in which these exemptions of medical healthcare industry is given. Now move on to GST on medical public pharmacy stores. We all know that pharmacy and medical supply is taxable. The medical public pharmacy store, whether situated in the clinical establishment or otherwise, are taxable under the provisions of GST Act. But when such services are being offered, as I mentioned earlier in my previous slide, as a part of IPD service, bundle services, then such services are exempt from GST. In this regard, a famous judgment of Kerala Authority for Advanced Billing made it clear that supply of medicine through pharmacy to inpatients will not be levied for goods and service tax separately. Now, move on to GST on medical consultancy. Such services can be defined as the consultancy services are being provided by the medical professionals for the purpose of treating a patient. No GST will be levied on such medical consultancy services, but such consultancy must be given for the purpose of cure and not for the purpose of care. The medical consultants hereby does not include the consultant or the treatment for the beauty treatment or chip center run by the authorized medical practitioners, because such services are not covered in the exemption entry of notification number 12/2017. Now move on to GST on blood bank services. The exemption entry with regard to GST on blood bank services are given in notification number 12/2017 of the GST states that the services provided by cord blood banks by way of preservation of stem cells or any other services in relation to such preservation, then such services are exempt from GST. Thus, not only the services of preservation of stem cells by blood banks are exempt, but also all other services needed by a blood bank for such preservations are covered in the above mentioned entry are exempt from GST. Now move on to GST on beauty treatment services. As specified in my above slides, if the such services are for cure, it will be exempt, and if such services are given for care, it will be taxed under GST. Beauty treatment includes hair cutting, hair dyeing, hair dressing, face and beauty treatment, cosmetic treatment, manicure, pedicure, or counseling services on beauty, face care, or makeup, or such other similar services. Thus, as per the registry entry of rate of schedule for services, 18% GST will be levied on such services of beauty treatment. Now move on to GST on biomedical waste treatment. The biomedical waste, also known as medical waste, is defined as a solid waste generated during the diagnosis, testing, treatment, research, or production of biological products for human or animals. Biomedical waste includes syringes, live vaccines, laboratory samples, body parts, body fluids and waste, sharp needles, cultures, and lancets. In medical industry, the safe and timely disposal of biomedical waste is utmost necessary. That is why the government is given exemption on this particular branch. The exemption entry with regard to GST on biomedical waste treatment says that services provided by an operator of common biomedical waste treatment facility to a clinical establishment by way of treatment of or disposal of biomedical waste or the process incidental thereto. Thus, when the such services are being provided by biomedical waste treatment operator to the clinical establishment for the treatment of biomedical waste, no GST will be levied on such services. Now move on to GST on various medical tests. A medical test is a kind of medical procedure performed to detect, diagnose, or monitor diseases, disease processes, susceptibility, and to determine a course of treatment. Such medical tests either done in own clinical establishment or done in separate clinical establishments set up specially for such tests are covered in the exemption entry and are thus exempt uh, from GST. Now move on to GST on veterinary doctor services. Veterinary medicine is the branch of medicine that deals with the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of disease, disorder, and injury in non-human animals. And veterinary doctor refers to a doctor for the treatment of animals or birds' disease and such other services for the same. The exemption entry with regard to the GST on veterinary doctor services says that the services by a veterinary clinic in relation to a health care of animals or birds are exempt from GST. In this particular case also, whenever services are given for cure, GST will not be levied, and whenever services are given for care, GST will be levied at the rate of 18%. Now move on to GST on renting. GST will be levied on renting services. As such, services of renting is not covered at any entry in the exemption of services from GST list. Thus, as per the residual entry, GST will be levied at the rate of 18% on renting services. For example, renting includes medical shops on rents in the hospital on rent in any premises, medical test centers on rent, etc., etc. Now move on to input tax credit, which is available to this particular type of industry. In this brand, the input tax credit can only be claimed only in respect of taxable supplies and not in respect of exempt supplies. If the input is procured and used for both taxable as well as exempt supplies, then the GST will be claimed or ITC will be claimed according to the provisions of CGST rules 2017. Further, we know that the registered taxable person is not entitled to input tax credit on supply unless and until he or she has fulfilled the conditions as mentioned in section 16 subsection 2 of the CGST Act 2017. Now move on to time and value of supply of services. Section 13 of the CGST Act 2017 decides the time and value of supply of services. Time of supply of services shall be A, where the invoice is not issued timely, date of provision of service or date of payment, whichever is earlier. B, where invoice is issued timely, date of issue of invoice or the date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. Where A and B do not apply, date on which recipient shows the receipt of service in his books of account. In this case, provided that where the supplier of taxable services receives an amount up to rupees 1000 in excess of the amount indicated in the tax invoice, the time of supply to the extent of such excess amount shall at the option of said supplier be the date of issue of invoice relating to such excess amount. Now move on to date of payment. The date of payment is the payment is entered in the books of supplier or the date on which the payment is credited to his bank account, whichever is earlier. Now we move on to valuation of services. For paying GST, SSC has to determine the assessable value of services and then apply the rate of GST on such assessable value. The formula for the same is assessable value multiplied by rate of tax. For determining such assessable value under different situations, valuation rules are prescribed under the provisions of GST law. Conditions with regard to value supply. First condition is transaction of supply of services having a definite consideration. Second one is between two parties who are not relatives, and third one is that is price is a sole consideration. If all the three conditions mentioned above are satisfied, then the value of supply will be the transaction value as per section 15(1) of the CGST Act. And if all the three conditions are not satisfied, then value of supply will be value determined as per the provisions of GST valuation rules. Thanks a lot for everyone for such a patient hearing. If you have any query with regard to this topic, particular topic, then you can call me on the mobile number mentioned in the slide, or you can also mail me on the email ID mentioned in the slide which I have shared. Before ending my presentation, I would once again sincerely request you to please like and subscribe CA Sansaar channel in YouTube. Thank you so much.